I'm so frustrated and it's not even funny. So earlier today, I was talking with this guy. He's also a musician, classically trained. He has a school, like a music school here. But for some reason, he just couldn't stop mentioning how he has a PhD from Manhattan School of Music, which is great, don't get me wrong. It takes a lot of work and a lot of sacrifice, a lot of practice, right? But the conversation is not even about that. So like, oh my God. And during the conversation, he started talking about his students and how he trains them. And it's mostly for the parents, if you think about it. He was talking about just like scholarships and going to these like conservatoires and universities. And he never mentioned the student at all. I'm not gonna lie, while he was talking, I was just imagining like a sweatshop that destroys kids' dreams in the name of like the twisted dreams of adults. That was the image that I had. And I'm sure that there's gonna be the discovery of gifted kids. But if you think about it, like in the name of sacrificing like thousands and thousands and thousands of dreams, like, I don't know, it's not worth it. I don't think so. Anyway, after our conversation, I started thinking about the decay of classical music and classical music's unwillingness for change. I know so many amazing composers who are not welcome in the classical world, like at all. So they have to have their own little scene. And it is classical music, it's just updated, you know what I mean? Based on what's happening today, based on the lifestyle of today, based on the issues of today. But these people in classical music, I really don't get it. I swear that every year, so like hundreds, if not thousands of albums of Chopin music comes out. Like, let the guy rest in peace. And it is super important, right? It's beautiful music and you know, it has a lot to offer, and it's completely fine for pianists to play their own interpretation. But you don't have to narrow it only to that. You know what I mean? There's so many living composers, and I don't know, but like the classical music scene is just rejecting all that. And if they're not, then that's how it feels. Same thing with when the synthesizer came out, right? Like one of the first albums, if not the best, don't quote me on this, I don't know. But it was the well-tempered clavier, right? Bach. And that was one of the first like albums of synthesizer, but it didn't really got implemented into classical music. And if it did, it was by these living composers who had to have their own little scene, because classical music, like the scene of classical music, really kind of like don't accept that. Which is weird, because when the harpsichord was the instrument and then the piano came to be, all these composers were embracing the piano and started composing for the piano, which you would think that with the birth of the synthesizer, something similar will happen. But now there is like that division. I think the problem began when classical music became an institute and became part of the academia, right? Like if we look at history, there was a time where 12-step compositions were a thing, which was music that completely pushed out society, and it was just a composer playing for his fellow composers. That is so beautiful. Oh my God, you saw that sequence? Ooh, oh, he's so deep thinking. And for that reason, I say thank God for Philip Glass. Really, in the beginning, just going with the people, I was like, oh my God, Philip Glass. Yeah, he's a lazy composer, right? He's just too simple. There was even a joke like, knock, knock, who's there? Knock, knock, who's there? Knock, knock, who's there? Knock, knock, who's there? Philip Glass. But now I know the importance of Philip Glass. In a way, I feel like Philip Glass was one of the saviors of classical music. He was one of the guys that brought classical music back to society. And I think that that is one of the main reasons why classical music is decaying. So if we check the demographic of classical music, it says that 42% likely to be 41 to 60 years old. 37% likely to be aged over 61. And 7% to be aged under 31. That's concerning. And in the New York Times, it says that 57 years old was the average age, and 62% of the Philharmonic's audience was 55 or older. With those numbers, there has to be a change. By the way, this is not an attack to any classical musician or interpreter, like at all. I'm a big fan of classical music. It's just a little bit weird of how things work in the classical world. It's just a lot of like, you know, and that's not what art's all about, right? It's about innovation, it's about discovery, it's about more than just how well can you execute a certain piece. It's more than just technique. It's more than that. All those factors are important, but it's way more than that. Anyway, I just needed to let that out because this conversation that I mentioned earlier, like it really pissed me off. And I don't know, that's it. Bye.